the grand brawl that is happening right now and that has been happening since roughly December, but more so in the last week and a half, is Steven Crowder versus Ben Shapiro's news outlet, the Daily Wire. So if you clicked on this episode, you would know that you would see the thumbnail of this episode on YouTube is Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro. So no, this is not a love letter to them. Definitely not. But this is a weird almost celebration, a weird soaking in of the brawl, the fight, the continued falling out of this relationship, and hopefully the positives that can come about from it from a leftist perspective or a progressive perspective. Now, for those of you that aren't maybe as terminally online as some of us, I will explain what has happened, what has led up to this, and then I have a bunch of clips from different folks, different perspectives, and I'm going to try to lead into them as best I can. But I think it's just important to note this story, even though it's not, inherently tied to politics as they're run today. And again, as we will get to later, there's not much that's going to be happening over the next 2 years, like legislatively. So this is the type of battles that we're going to have to be fighting. But the Daily Wire, for those who don't know, is one of, if not the largest independent media outlets. Calling them independent media is kind of an overstatement, as they receive funding from billionaires and spend that accordingly. But it is run by Ben Shapiro, and he has a co-owner with the last name, literally his last name is Boring. And we're not going to watch any clips of his response today, but the co-owner of the Daily Wire really dug into Steven Crowder in this, but we're going to ignore him for the most part. The Daily Wire has used quite literally, and I'm not exaggerating this, millions of dollars in Facebook advertisements, millions of dollars in YouTube advertisements. Remember also Abby Shapiro, who is Ben Shapiro's sister, who would appear before every YouTube video paying for views, because that's basically what they're doing, to boost their viewership, which would inherently boost subscribers, which by itself wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't funded directly by billionaires to buy market share. Because these are the and we'll keep alluding to this throughout this, but these are the folks that are supposedly pro-capitalism, that are pro-free market. And it's just interesting to see them LARP as this totally free market, while at the same time receiving funds that essentially prop them up without any challenge and have no logical base, have no real footing in reality. But alas, they exist. And Steven Crowder, for those who don't know, I am also very envious of you if you do not know who he is, because he is the most vile, racist, xenophobic, transphobic piece of crap probably still allowed on YouTube, because there are probably worse people, but they're maybe not allowed on YouTube. And he was formerly Pinky, I believe, from Arthur. He was a voice on that show, believe it or not. And he has been publicly embarrassed quite a few times, but he's also a transphobe. He would dress up in drag and go to Planet Fitnesses and try to get kicked out, totally ignoring the fact that he was just being an obnoxious piece of crap. Again, slamming weights, doing all that stuff that would get you normally kicked out of a regular gym, let alone a Planet Fitness. But because he was dressed in drag, he was trying to, say, oh, they won't kick me out. They still did, but it was this whole thing, right? All of these publicity stunts to get in the public eye, to gain attention. He's also the change my mind guy with the mug and sitting there like a smug a-hole at colleges debating college kids right before class for them. His very little value to us is very little value to this country and to the narrative of, just generally speaking, to leftism, to politics broadly. He is just a stain on the space, I would say. But why we're talking about it today? Formerly, and maybe I'm working with an assumption here, but for those who don't know, again, Glenn Beck was a former Fox News host, a radio host. He still does his show, but he is the owner of a network called The Blaze, which also receives billionaire funding. And The Blaze previously was home, if you want to, put it in that term, home of the wonderful show that Steven Crowder puts out every day. So what happened, and of course, The Blaze also funds Dave Rubin's content and a few others that I believe, I am correct before I said it, but I'm correct. The Blaze used to also host Tomi Lahren before she got canceled by the right wing because she is pro-choice. And that might surprise some of you, by the way, that Tomi Lahren is pro-choice, because she is an absolute nut job as well, loves Trump, but yes, was pro-choice and got kicked off of The Blaze. Now she's on Fox News. The Blaze was the host of Steven Crowder's show, where it would be produced. They would receive the subscribers that Steven Crowder brought in. So there's a paywall called the Mug Club, where it was like Patreon or any of these things that were kind of behind. It's basically creating a paywall to get access to exclusive content, right? And the Blaze would technically get the funding for it and disperse it back down to the show, creating the revenue cycle, because Steven Crowder's YouTube channel is demonetized because of the continued xenophobia, racism, transphobia, etc. With all that setup happening, in December, and I think it is Binky as well, I probably misspoke. I'm thinking of Pinky in the Brain, because there's an episode of Arthur, I think, that I'm mixing it up with. But in December, apparently, Steven Crowder's contract for his show came to an end with The Blaze. Now, we don't know what happened. We don't know why his stay with The Blaze, his support with The Blaze, wasn't extended. We don't know why. We may never know why. He signed... almost everybody is speculating that he signed an NDA that doesn't allow him to, really kind of dig into what happened there. With that being said, he basically took December off of recording his show, putting out content, and registered a website called Stop Big Con. And he's not talking about stopping me, although he might be talking about me, because I could probably take him in a lifting competition if I had to. Steven, if you're seeing this, we can have a bench off any day. But no, Stop Big Con is Steven Crowder's attempt at creating a movement to stop big conservative, which is, anything. If you want to dive into the quote populist right wing mind, just put big in front of anything and it immediately makes it bad, which is silly. But big government, big tech, all this stuff, big con. So he was bracing himself for this fight where he can go after whoever, the Blaze, another company, and just really let him have it. But in the interim, he was discussing getting a contract for his show with a new platform. That platform was not public. We did not know who it was when he was discussing this publicly for the first time, by the way. So just, to keep the suspense, I mean, you already know who it was, but to keep the suspense going for the time, he didn't allude to who it was. He didn't say who it was. He just said a big conservative network offered him a contract that he said was like slave wages. In that, Crowder continued to allude, and then that night, Ben Shapiro's co-owner, Mr. Boring, released a hour-long video basically going over the contract that they had offered to Steven Crowder for his show, which, brace yourselves, this is what is considered slave labor or slave wages by Mr. Crowder. A $50 million contract for 4 years, so $12.5 million per year. $50 million for his horrendous show where he wears a holster and has a gun on his side because he gets sponsors from gun manufacturers and a holster manufacturer. $12.5 million to produce the show and to own the show for those 4 years, and own in perpetuity for all the content that was produced with the Daily Wire's funding, specifically the exclusive content, let's say. So essentially there was like yearly stipulations that you have to do one show of this and one show of that, whatever. But it was very minimal. By the way, he got 24 days off. He wouldn't work on Fridays. And the Daily Wire leaks all of this stuff publicly, I guess. It's not a leak. I mean, it's their control. And Steven Crowder starts, shaking in his holster. And I don't know that he expected them to just come out of the gate and just be like, boom, here we go. But he was kind of alluding to this, secretly, because he wanted to say, oh, this big conservative outlet, they're hurting the little guy. They are, pushing me down, while nobody knows like the real revenue that that Steven Crowder brings in, because not even himself, because we don't know how many subscribers he has to the quote Mug Club. We also don't know how much money he gets from sponsorships, etc. But to turn down $50 million and call it slave wages is pretty insane. He also he's also like just hurting his own employees, because presumably, unless he could earn more money and give them more money, he's just hurting them. But also having this contract leak to the public where his own employees will now know all the different pieces of it and what he turned down is also not going to look good for him when he knows that, oh, if $12.5 million is enough, even with a $1 million overhead budget, which he doesn't have, by the way, because all he has is a studio and he has like a couple people working for him. If he had a $1 million budget, he'd still be coming home with $11.5 million per year. So the one stipulations or some of the stipulations otherwise are, if he got further demonetized, if certain things got taken down, then there were penalties for it. So, he's alluding to this giant controversy. Oh, they're just coming after me. I'm the little guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Daily Wire went back and fired at him, dropping all the information. And then Ben Shapiro himself comes after, and I'm pulling up clip, Ben Shapiro himself will tell us what really happened. And this is, of course, if you believe Ben Shapiro, but this is what really happened, according to the Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro.
This term sheet offering him $50 million over 4 years plus a 2-year extension for $25 million. Basketball player type money. On November 2nd, Stephen called up Jeremy and said, I want $30 million a year.
Jeremy Boring, which is the other guy.
I'm not going to redline the term sheet. I'm not going to edit the term sheet. I just want you to send me a brand new offer. On November 6th, 4 days later, remember, this is after he's already sounded off. He's got the term sheet. He's had it for a month. November 6th was election night. You'll recall, if you're a Daily Wire fan, Stephen Crowder appeared on our election night coverage. Everything was very friendly. Everything was very chummy. Everything was great.
Chummy.
November 14th or thereabouts, we decided that we couldn't meet his demands, that his demands were not rational in business terms, that he wanted too much.
So what Shapiro's not saying here, but we found out later, was that his counteroffer to the $50 million was a $120 million contract over 4 years.
Much money and all the rest of it. So we let him know, no hard feelings. We're still friends, just like we do in every contract negotiation. As Tim Pool said on his show last night, we've had contract negotiations with Tim, and we disagreed, and we went our separate ways, and we still like Tim. Tim still likes us, and all the rest.
We'll see about that, because we have a clip from Tim Pool's show with Stephen Crowder in a second here as well, but...
Okay, so November 14th or thereabouts, we told Stephen that we couldn't meet his demands. Fast forward another month, December 12th, he registered the site Stop Big Con. Hey, that's when he registered.
Remember, not me.
It. Remember, October 5th is when he received the terms. November 14th is when we said we could not meet his demands. December 12th is when he registered Stop Big Con because he knew that 3 days later he was going to be announcing that he was leaving the Blaze. He needed a plan, and attacking us was the plan. December 15th, he announced he was leaving the Blaze. A month after that, he texted Jeremy.
Here is where it gets really juicy, because I haven't told you what happens here yet.
Friendly fashion to ask if they could talk. On January 9th, he called Jeremy and proceeded to tape him. Without permission, without Jeremy's knowledge, he proceeded to tape a person who was supposedly his friend. And remember, this is all based on the passion of the upset that he had over a term sheet that was submitted to him on October 5th. It is a month. It's actually 36 days after. So January 17th is when he launches Stop Big Con. So just to get this straight, just to get the timeline straight, because this is what we would call a premeditated move in an attempt to grow your email list. This means 104 days elapsed between when Stephen Crowder received the term sheet that we submitted to him and when he launched Stop Big Con. 104 days.
So there you have it. The recording was of Shapiro's co-owner and seeing what he can get him to admit on video, basically. Now, what's really important here, and is kind of not alluded to, but the reason why Stephen Crowder was talking about 50 million being slave wages is because the recording he got of Jeremy Boring was him saying that sometimes new creators, not necessarily meaning Crowder, but other new creators have to come in and do work and be basically wage slaves, which a normal capitalist usually wouldn't admit that that's what they're doing, saying that wage slavery exists. But Stephen Crowder is very clearly talking about how exploitive this contract is, how it's not good enough for him because if he gets demonetized, and they already know he's demonetized, he's going to get penalized, and all these gripes that he has. Boo-hoo. Shapiro gets pissed because of the recording. I mean, somewhat rightfully so. I mean, if someone was recording me, I'd be kind of mad. But then we have Stephen Crowder going on the Tim Pool show, as I pull it up here, and discussing what his gripes are with the Daily Wire itself now.
Back to you time and time again. If you did what company X, if you did what...
So what he's talking about is his conversations with YouTube. Look at this is a great picture. He looks totally stable here. He's definitely not sweating. He's definitely not nervous. talking about YouTube, his contact at YouTube, telling him how he could basically get remonetized or how he could just not lose his monetization on YouTube so he can make more money, because he's complaining about Daily Wire. He has alluded to the Daily Wire not getting banned, not getting demonetized, etc. And there is a real critique there, and I will come back to that in a second, but he is talking about it and saying, like, why don't I just fall in line?
Company, meaning big conservative companies who have meetings with them. As if you did that, we might be able to get you remonetized or at least not suspended. And that's what, I mean, this is the thing.
Is there any examples you could give us about key issues specifically about that?
Yeah, anything relating, back in the day on trans issues. For example, we had a character like we did for a long time. Trenny Bane was a character that we did. It was Bane Dark Knight series, and the whole idea was an uprising, Arkham Asylum against YouTube. They said you can't do that anymore. There was one where they said you can't sell off-site the socialism shirt that we had, which wasn't even on YouTube. The socialism was for fig shirt. You don't want to know the funny story about that? I've never seen John laugh so hard. Was we started selling on the website, because socialism is for figs. It's a play on words. You may not like it, but people also need to know Che Guevara executed gays, right? This is a guy, when you wear a Che Guevara shirt, you're wearing a Hitler who was less successful in being charismatic and duping people. Not saying Hitler was successful. I'm saying he was a genocidal maniac. So, of course, we're mocking him. YouTube says, well, you can't do that. That shirt is hate speech.
The shirt is mocking Che Guevara, of course, not gay people, which Steven Crowder definitely does not have a problem with gay people. No, none whatsoever. Or trans people. No, none whatsoever. He just loves dressing up in drag and acting a certain way, maybe stereotypical, playing into stereotypes. And I've never seen a guy dress up more in drag, that hates the LGBTQ plus community. And look, if he wasn't such a fucking bigot, then it wouldn't be a big deal. But he could do that, and it would be like George Santos dressing in drag. Like, not really a big deal. Not really a big deal. But because of his bigotry, because of his actions, because of his ideology, it's a big deal. But that is why he's saying that he gets banned from YouTube.
Speech. It's off the platform. So what we ended up selling at the Crowder shop was a mystery box. And I get a call from one of the most senior executives at YouTube, and I go, what? They go, we know what's in the box. I was like, I'm thinking someone in Silicon Valley is opening it like, and so we stopped selling. But that's something that's completely off the platform. But the point is,
so that is one part of his appearance on Tim Pool. Now, I am going to talk about, we're going to go to the Pit Bull. And I'm saying this because Shapiro is kind of playing nice. Boring is kind of playing nice. But one person that doesn't give a damn about any of this, and probably is pissed when they saw the money that Steven Crowder was offered and turned down, is Walk Away founder, all the other crap that, former Kanye West advisor, Candace Owens, who happens to also be a host on the Daily Wire. So what does Candace have to think about Steven Crowder?
Over the weekend, I was given a lot more information regarding Steven Crowder, a lot more background information regarding what could have possibly led to this moment. And
what could that be?
Not to my surprise at all. Obviously, this really doesn't have anything to do with the Daily Wire. And his actions are a symptom of something much larger. And I want to choose my words very carefully here because I'm not angry anymore. Steven has a lot.
She's not mad, by the way. She's not mad. We have 2 clips of her. She's not mad. The outfit that she works for getting dragged to the mud a little bit, as it probably should be, but not mad. I repeat, not mad.
Going on, I guess is the best way to say it. He has a lot going on, and that should be clear.
A lot going on. He has health issues, supposedly. He has newborn children, but this is the clear thing, is that she's not alluding to that. She's not alluding to that. We don't know what she's talking about yet. And that is where we'll see as we kind of, over the next couple of weeks or so, we'll see if she goes full nuke on this.
Because people don't do stuff like this if there's not a lot going on in their lives. You don't sell out your friend. You don't record conversations. These things are actions of individuals that are perhaps acting out of desperation. You have to dig deeper. You have to look deeper to fully understand the picture of why somebody might do that. And it's certainly not because somebody is upset with a $50 million contract. And because I now am more aware of certain information, rather than being angry, I would like to implore my audience and everybody that isn't paying attention to this situation not to condemn him, but to pray for him. Sometimes people need a prayer. Sometimes people need a scripture. You know, Stephen purports to be a Christian, and I believe that he needs to lean into his faith. And I am certain that in the near future, more information will come out. I do not think it is my place to say more than that. Well, probably what I should say is I am unsure at this moment if it is my place to say more than that.
That is some juicy drama right there, if I have to say so myself. Because she's not just talking about, like, a contract. Like, she's not just talking about, oh, he's doing this because of he hates big conservative outlets. No. They're right. He is trying to grow his email list. He's trying to be independent. He's trying to launch his own platform. He's trying to do all this stuff, but why? Why is he acting out like this? Why does he feel like he's under such pressure? Why is he not getting the alternative, money that he's looking for? And actually, speaking of which, let's go to the second clip, where this is from yesterday. The first one was from 2 days ago. Now this one's from yesterday. Again, and this is not to praise Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and any of them. This is just showing to you this internal fight between these online right-wingers.
It is not worth us saying anything more, in my opinion. I don't know what the Daily Wire is going to say about it further. But the reason,
remember, she's not mad. This is not the same day.
Really seeing just how nasty what you did was, and I think that I would hope that you would come to terms with the fact that you owe everybody an apology, that this was never necessary, that you can start whatever company you want. You don't get to step in like a socialist, and it is socialist-like. These are the demands that you hear, and people are trying to establish a union when the Amazon workers have walked out because they have...
This is a great clip to exemplify why she's also not that bright, while she's a stooge for the large billionaires, while she is, coming out here saying that unions are demanding $50 million in wages, which she's going to talk about here in lunch breaks and working from home. Oh, you wanna work from home? You can't do your job from home, while she's sitting in a studio, while she's getting millions of dollars. She's paid by billionaires who pay other millionaires who pay her to spew nonsense so that their ideology and their viewpoint of the world is upheld and not challenged like it should be. But you as a worker should be pushed down. But Steven Crowder's acting like a socialist. Ew, a union person, which, remember that Steven Crowder got socked in the jaw by a union member a couple years ago, which is kind of hilarious. But this is the demands that she is alluding to, or not even alluding to, directly calling out and comparing to the demands of Steven Crowder.
Decided that they are worth more. That they
and yeah, socialism means starting a union in their world, which is actually true. Like, that is what they think that socialism is. They think that any workers' rights, and this is where the conflation of like populist right and populist left comes into play, where it's like you are not a populist because you hate one sect of the global corporate elite, and specifically for Crowder, a certain religion, I'll just say, or maybe two religions. You're not challenging the status quo. You're not challenging the capitalist system by being a populist on the right, because a populist on the right is a fascist. That is all. You uphold and utilize nationalism to divide people that don't look like you, divide people that don't sound like you, divide people that don't speak the same language as you, that don't practice the same religion as you, that are anything different than you, to divide and uphold the systems that the people that Crowder is supposedly hating on with Big Con, but uplifting them basically by their ideology being perpetuated throughout this media landscape, throughout this country, based on just not being able to challenge it. You can't challenge it on that scale.
They should have 3-hour lunch breaks. They've gotten their contract.
Nobody's ever demanded a 3-hour lunch break.
From Amazon, and they realize that their lunch breaks are only 1 hour, and that they're required to show
Actually, people at Amazon, I don't even think have necessarily a 1-hour lunch break.
up to work, and they think they should be able to work from home for 3 days a week.
People at Amazon don't ask to work from home because they work in a warehouse.
Post-COVID, and they walk out and they want to stage a union, and this is the big con. It's Amazon.
Amazon is not the same thing that she's alluding to in any sort of way.
No, this is the free markets. And so to Tim Pool, what I would say, and I like Tim Pool.
Free markets also, this is something that they don't like to talk about very much. The free market allows for, in theory, with the First Amendment, the right and the freedom to organize and the right to form a union and to collectively bargain based on the First Amendment in this country, but based on the concept more broadly. If you're looking at, countries that don't have the exact same right to collective action through speech.
And I think that he is always very kind to all of his guests that he has on his show. But when he says that he doesn't think $50 million is enough, I would like to say that the free markets will answer that question, right? It doesn't look like anybody's come to him with an offer that's bigger, which is what.
So that is the point that we have to loop back to here. And in closing on this, because the free market has shown that it does not work in this scenario, because the free market would not require billionaires upholding something that doesn't necessarily make a profit, but it is a propaganda outlet. We are dealing with somebody demanding more money because they know that they have more content that they can give to this oligarch, but it's not enough. So the free market, in Candace's viewpoint, isn't working here, or it is working here, but under Steven Crowder's viewpoint, it is not working because it is an exploitative contract, even though they don't believe that contracts can be exploitative, because they don't believe that you can accept a contract that is exploiting a worker, because the employee and the employer come from the same perspective. They both want the same thing. So when they meet at a meeting point, that it can't be possibly a power imbalance. Which is also, they don't understand that the power of collective bargaining, the collective actions by organizing through a union, through a co-op, through activism, through any of these means, they don't like it because it undermines the boss, and they view themselves as the boss rather than the worker. But they LARP and act like they're the worker when it is suitable to them. They LARP and they act like they're the worker when they need to otherize and tap into the fear and the xenophobia of their platform, of their audience, to weaponize them and to villainize the people that they want to go after, which they continuously go after people typically with no power. But in this case, they're punching each other. So this is why we're covering this, because it's fun to watch them punch each other, where no one's going to come out the winner. Nobody's going to come out here and just be like, oh yeah, we totally made it and it's all good. We're going to be watching this as it unfolds, and if something noteworthy comes from it in the next coming week or so, I will bring it up in the next episode. But for right now, the entire point of covering this is just to show you the amount of money, the amount of influence that is bought and sold via billionaires, corporate elites that dump into their propaganda, because these folks will spew it. They have no real ideology. They have nothing that is driving them. The only thing that is driving them is cash.